I never knew silence could weigh this much until I woke up that morning and they were gone. The apartment was exactly as it had been. The cups in the kitchen, Sarah's fabric doll on the couch, Adam's small shoe by the door. Everything in its place except them. Except Sarah's voice calling Mama in that soft tone that made me feel life was worth living. Except Adam's laugh he'd release whenever he saw the cats on the morning show. The silence filled every corner, seeping under doors, pressing on my chest until breathing itself felt like a deliberate act requiring conscious decision. The note was on the kitchen table, written in Michael's slanted handwriting I knew so well. "You won't find them. Don't try." Just 6 words. He didn't even sign his name, as if he no longer needed to claim what he'd done. I picked up the note and read it again, then a third time, as if repetition might change its meaning. But the words remained the same, cold and decisive. I went to their room. Sarah's bed was carefully made, and so was Adam's. He hadn't left a mess, hadn't forgotten anything. Everything was calculated, planned with a precision that made me realize he'd been thinking about this for a long time, while I was making them breakfast and helping with their homework and thinking we were a normal family going through a rough patch. I called the police. They came and took the report with sympathetic but reserved faces. They said the father has rights too, that he's not a stranger to them, that they'd do what they could, but the matter was legally complex. Complex. That word would haunt me everywhere afterward. The first lawyer I went to used the same word. Complex because Michael is their biological father. Complex because there were no prior restraining orders. Complex because there was no documented violence. All he did was take his children and disappear. And in the eyes of the law, this wasn't necessarily a clear crime as long as he was one of the legal parents. The first weeks were hazy. I moved without awareness, went to work because bills wouldn't pay themselves, returned to the empty apartment, stared at its walls until morning came. My coworkers tried to sympathize, brought me coffee, asked if I needed anything. But what could I tell them? How do you explain the emptiness left by your children's absence? How do you describe the feeling that part of your soul has been cut out with a cold scalpel and taken somewhere you don't know? I started searching on my own. I reached out to every friend Michael had, every relative. Most said they knew nothing, and some didn't respond to my calls at all. His mother, that woman who never liked me, hung up on me after saying her son was doing what's best for his children. That was the first time I heard this narrative, the narrative Michael would build and carefully feed. That I wasn't a good mother, that I was neglectful, that he was worried about their safety. All lies, but skillfully crafted lies, supported by small details that could be interpreted in more than one way. I hired a private investigator. He was a middle-aged man with the smell of old coffee and eyes that had seen too much. He took half of what I owned as a retainer and promised to do what he could. In the following weeks, he traced Michael's last steps, talked to his old neighbors, examined his credit card records before he stopped using them. Every trail ended at a certain point, as if Michael had studied how to disappear the way one studies a recipe. But the investigator found one important thing. Michael had resigned from his job 2 months before disappearing and withdrawn all his savings in cash. He'd been planning this for a while. He'd sit with me at the dinner table, play with Sarah and Adam, smile at me sometimes, and all that time he was counting down the days. This realization created something inside me. Not just anger, but something deeper and colder. It was a kind of clarity, a sudden understanding that the person I thought I knew was just a mask Michael wore skillfully. In the long nights, I'd sit in the living room trying to understand why. Why did he do this? Our marriage had problems, yes. We argued about money, about raising the kids, about the trivial things all couples argue about. But nothing justified this. I hadn't cheated on him, hadn't hurt him, hadn't tried to prevent him from seeing his children. Then I started noticing small details in my memory. Those moments I'd ignored or rationalized. How he always insisted he was the most important person in the children's lives. How he'd diminish me in front of them in subtle ways. How he'd portray himself as the hero fixing what I'd broken. Michael wanted complete control. He couldn't stand the idea of sharing their existence with me, of me having influence on them equal to his. And when he felt he was losing that control, or perhaps when I decided I wouldn't accept his treatment of me anymore, he chose to take everything. A year passed, then two. My life became a fixed pattern. Work, search, wait. I checked every possible lead, followed every signal. I learned to use the internet in ways I never knew before, joined support groups for mothers in similar situations, read about parental kidnapping cases. I discovered my story wasn't unique, that there were many women living the same nightmare. Some found their children after years, and some never found them at all. But I knew Michael would make a mistake eventually. People who disappear this way need a new life, new documents, and that means they leave traces. These traces might be small and distant, but they exist. I just needed patience. In the third year, the first opportunity came. I joined every possible social media platform, constantly searching for pictures of children Sarah and Adam's age. I used facial recognition programs, searched through thousands of photos. One day, while browsing a random elementary school account in Oregon, I saw a group photo of a classroom. In the back row, there was a boy with dark brown hair, with the same head tilt Adam had, the same shy smile. My heart stopped for a moment. I enlarged the photo, studied every detail. I wasn't completely sure, but the possibility was enough. I traveled to Oregon the following weekend. I stood outside the school Monday morning, watching the children enter. Then I saw him. Adam. He was taller than I remembered. His hair shorter, but he was my son. I knew him from the way he walked, from the movement of his hands. I wanted to run to him, to hug him, to scream his name. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, watching him disappear into the building, every cell in my body screaming. I had to be smart. If I approached him now, Michael would know and disappear again. And this time, I'd never find them. I returned to the hotel and started planning. I tracked the school bus to a quiet residential neighborhood. I watched Adam get off with a small girl whose hand he was holding. Sarah. She was laughing at something he'd said, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My daughter, whom I'd last seen barely able to form a complete sentence, was now a whole child with her own life and memories I wasn't part of. I followed them from a distance to a small house at the end of a cul-de-sac. I waited. After half an hour, Michael came out. He was wearing work clothes, carrying a lunch bag. He got into an old car and left. Everything looked so ordinary, a quiet suburban life. As if what he'd done wasn't theft, as if he hadn't completely destroyed another person. I returned to Chicago and contacted my lawyer. I told her what I'd found. She said she'd start legal proceedings immediately, file a motion with the court, use local authorities. But I knew the law was slow, that Michael might find out and run again before anything moved. I needed guarantees. I spent the following months building a complete file. I hired another investigator in Oregon to monitor Michael. We discovered he was working under an assumed name, using a fake social security number registered in school records as a single father. All of this was illegal, and every piece of information I gathered strengthened my case. But I didn't move yet. I was waiting for the right moment. My lawyer, Rachel, was a woman in her 40s with thick prescription glasses and a firm way of speaking. She told me in one meeting, "I know you want to rush things, but we need to build an irrefutable case. Michael will try to portray you in the worst possible way, and we need to be ready." She was right. We started gathering testimonies from people who knew me, from the children's former teachers, from doctors, from anyone who could confirm I was a good mother. We collected medical records proving I took the children for their regular checkups, family photos, email messages. Every piece was added to the larger puzzle. At the same time, I was building a new life for myself. I enrolled in a program to get a management certificate that would open better job opportunities. I moved to a bigger apartment with 2 additional rooms, one for Sarah and one for Adam. I didn't know when they'd return, but I knew they would, and I wanted them to have a real home waiting. Those years were the hardest of my life, but also the most formative. I learned to be patient in a way I'd never known before. I learned that burning anger accomplishes nothing, but cold determination can move mountains. I went to a therapist once a week, told her about my nightmares, about the days I felt I couldn't continue. She'd listen, then remind me of the goal. Your children need you to be strong now more than ever. In the 4th year, we officially filed the case. My lawyer had built a strong case: parental kidnapping, use of forged documents, violation of custody rights. The court issued an order to recover the children, but executing it required coordination between the authorities of both states. I knew Michael would try to flee as soon as he found out. So I asked Rachel to coordinate with local police in Oregon to execute the order quickly and without prior warning. The day they executed the order, I was there. I sat in the police car, my heart pounding violently. I watched them knock on the door, watched Michael open it with a confused face, then scared, then angry. He was shouting, saying they didn't understand, that this was a mistake. But the orders were clear. They brought Sarah and Adam out of the house. They looked scared, confused. They didn't recognize me. When I approached them, Sarah looked at me with wide eyes. "Who are you?" she asked in a small voice. I felt like something shattered inside me. I knelt before her, tried to smile despite the tears. "I'm Mama, sweetheart. I'm your mother." Adam was hiding behind one of the officers, looking at me suspiciously. They'd forgotten me. Or perhaps Michael had taught them to forget me. I don't know which was more painful. The following months were a continuous legal battle. Michael hired a lawyer, tried to claim he was protecting the children from me, that I was unstable, that I was a danger to them. But all the evidence was against him. Records proved he was the one who disappeared with them, that he used fake identities, that he prevented them from any contact with me. The court granted me full custody and gave him limited supervised visits. But the legal victory wasn't the end of the story. Sarah and Adam were strangers to me. They wanted their father, cried for him at night, asked when they'd return home. I tried to be patient, to rebuild the relationship slowly. I took them to a child therapist specialized in cases like this. Slowly, the pieces started coming together. Adam was the first to start remembering. One night, while I was reading him a bedtime story, he suddenly said, "I remember you. You used to read me this story." That moment was a turning point. Slowly, memories started returning to him, and with them, he began to trust me again. Sarah took longer. She was younger when she disappeared, and her memories were weaker. But she was a smart and sensitive child, and slowly she started noticing things. She noticed how I was always there, how I didn't lie to her, how I truly listened to her. She started opening up piece by piece. As for my revenge on Michael, it wasn't in the courtroom. It was in something deeper than that. It was in rebuilding the trust he'd shattered. Every day I proved to Sarah and Adam that I was present, that I wouldn't abandon them, was a blow to him. Every beautiful memory we made together, every laugh, every moment of safety, erased part of the image he'd tried to plant in them about me. During his limited visits, Michael tried to win them over again, bought them expensive gifts, took them to exciting places. But I didn't compete with him on that level. Instead, I gave them something he couldn't give them: stability, honesty. The feeling of security that comes from knowing the person who says they love you won't suddenly take you from everything you know. With time, the children began to understand. I never spoke badly of Michael in front of them, never tried to make them hate him. I knew they'd reach their own conclusions, and they did. When Adam was 12, he said to me one day, "I know he took us from you. I know he lied to us." I said nothing, just held him. Sarah took longer, but eventually she understood too. She was 14 when she decided she didn't want to see her father anymore. I didn't encourage her or try to stop her. I just told her the decision was hers, and I'd support her whatever she chose. Michael tried to resist at first, but he lost. He lost not just the legal battle, but something more important: his children's trust. Every time he tried to call them and they refused, every birthday that passed without them wanting to see him was a reminder of what he'd done. As for me, I learned something during those long years. I learned that true revenge isn't in destroying the person who hurt you, but in building something better from the ashes they left. Every day I spend with Sarah and Adam, Every dinner we share, every conversation about their future, every night they sleep safely in their rooms, is a victory. Now, 10 years after that morning, I woke to silence. I look at our life and see something I couldn't have imagined possible in those dark days. Sarah is in college studying law. She says she wants to help women like me. Adam is in high school, plays basketball, has friends and a normal life. They know their story now, understand what happened, but it didn't break them. Instead, it made them stronger, more empathetic, more aware. Sometimes in the quiet nights, I think about Michael. I wonder if he regrets it, if he truly understands what he lost. But then I realize it doesn't matter. His regret or lack of it doesn't change anything. What matters is that my children came back, that they're okay, that they know I never stopped fighting for them. That's the only revenge I ever needed. Not his suffering, but their healing. Not his loss, but our rebuilding. The woman he tried to erase became the mother who found her way back. Not through rage or destruction, but through patience, persistence, and love that refused to die even in the darkest silence. And in the end, that quiet victory tastes sweeter than any vengeance ever could.